In Parashat Vayera, we find Abraham sitting at the entrance of his tent, seeking, as he always seems to, an encounter with the divine. In his moment of vulnerability, recovering from circumcision, he is prepared to receive guests whom he soon discovers are angels, bringing messages of hope, promise, and challenge. Abraham's encounter with these divine messengers transforms him, pushing him further along his journey to become a person of even greater faith and greater compassion. The story of Abraham's encounter at the tent has many lessons. Among them, it teaches us that sometimes meeting God requires stepping out in ways that challenge and stretch us. Abraham's journey mirrors our own. When we walk into the sacred space of the synagogue, when we come here, we too ought to be looking for something beyond ourselves, seeking to find that something through gathering with others, through ritual, and through learning. Is this the deeper purpose of our gathering here in this tent? Why are we here? Why come together in this moment, in this space? This is an especially important question to consider today in light of tensions and challenges regarding the role of the synagogue in these days of national rebirth, these days when we have a state of our own, and especially these days when that state is at war. There's no question that over the 20th century, we saw the gradual emergence of a new Judaism in the North American synagogue. The Judaism that we practice today is very different than the one practiced 100 years ago, in many different ways. In the North American synagogue, our Judaism isn't marked by allegiance to Torah and mitzvot, as much as it may be marked by allegiance to the state of Israel. I would offer that this synagogue is a great example of a temple built for that new kind of Judaism. This synagogue was established in the Magic years, when Israel's emergence, existence, and survival were at the top of the religious agenda. I'm not sure how many of us appreciate the break from the past that this new Judaism represented. Those who rejected essential principles of Judaism, like Shabbat or covenant or kashrut, no big deal. Suddenly they were warmly welcomed and embraced. But if you, God forbid, rejected Israel, such an act of disloyalty could get you removed from the dinner table as soon as it would get you labeled as a heretic in the synagogue. Rabbi Elliot Cosgrove, in his new book, For a Time Such as This, laments the emergence of this new Judaism in America. I'll be interviewing him about his new book next week. In it, he describes the way that support for Israel has become a vicarious faith in the North American Jewish community. He describes Zionism as the official civil religion of North American Jews, a civil religion masking the inadequacies of our actual religion. I found his analysis, while challenging, deeply resonant, and the phenomenon he describes equally concerning. It affects synagogues like ours in profound ways. Synagogues like ours where support for Israel is unwavering and strong. Take a look at the program calendar, in the past year in particular, of a synagogue like ours. a program calendar that has been overwhelmed by Zionist events, but I would offer severely underwhelmed with Jewish ones. Israel has become almost our sole focus. It's at the heart of every sermon, like this one, every speaker, every community program. The recent visit of a social media celebrity to Beth Tikvah, an Israeli professor at Columbia who rightly attacked the biases of his university, speaking from the bimah with jeans and an uncovered head, packed our sanctuary with around 600 people attending a few weeks ago. Just 2 weeks prior, 4 people came to my class about preparing for the high holidays. Last night, like many Friday nights, we struggled to get a minyan at our Kabbalat Shabbat service. The numbers speak to them for themselves. They speak to what our community cares about. And then there are other synagogues. 2 weeks ago, I attended a conference on Zionism hosted by the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York, where I was reminded of the vast spectrum of feelings, philosophies, and passions surrounding Israel in the American Jewish community today. In synagogues where support for Israel is controversial, rabbis struggle to say anything, to comment on or articulate any stance regarding current events, fearing for the possibility of fracturing their community or fearing harassment from one side or the other for articulating views that are too nuanced. In this challenging time, while I have been gratified to see so many people connecting with Jewish identity, I find myself increasingly disturbed by the lack of connection among those people, not with Jewish identity, but with Judaism. I find myself increasingly troubled by the reality that so many of us are participating in synagogue life today, much more for cultural or even political reasons. Now, this is certainly to be expected. In the face of rising global anti-Semitism, like the attack in Amsterdam last week, it is a natural impulse to support and protect Israel, and Jewish peoplehood comes first. And I want to say that unequivocally, that nationhood, commitment to the people of Israel and the state of Israel is a core Jewish commitment. But what I want us to think about is where that commitment comes from. Why express such a commitment? It seems to me that if our commitment to Jewish peoplehood is not grounded in Torah, then it simply is tribalism, and it will have a tough time justifying itself or enduring over time. A Zionism that grows out of our Jewish commitments and not instead of them is a much stronger Zionism. And I promise you, it is one much more ready to withstand the storm of particular policy decisions of one Israeli government or another. Our synagogue must be a place for us to grow, to study, to question, and deepen our souls. It must be a space where we develop an identity rooted in our rich spiritual heritage, not solely in reactions to outside forces. There is, in a sense, something really simple and beautiful about Parashat Vayera in recalling a time before the Jewish journey was intertwined with nationhood or statehood. Abraham's faith was centered around his pursuit of righteousness and kindness, his willingness to advocate for justice, and his ability to enter into difficult conversations with God. Recall Abraham's plea for Sodom and Gomorrah. He doesn't simply accept God's plan to destroy the cities. He argues, he negotiates, he advocates for mercy. He is the archetype of someone whose spiritual life is dynamic, rooted in a commitment to justice and compassion, shaped by engaging deeply with the divine. His religious commitments are so motivating for him that he has no problem placing them ahead of his commitment to Jewish nationhood. That is the symbol of placing his son, his only son, upon the altar at God's command. This year, we must be especially mindful of Abraham's legacy and the core reasons for why we gather in synagogue. Our children look to us to understand what it means to be Jewish. What are we teaching them if our primary focus is simply on Israel's political issues or the prevalence of anti-Semitism? Yes, these are essential concerns, but if that is all they see of Jewish life, we run the risk of teaching them a Judaism that is solely about defense, fear, and reaction. I know, and you know, that Judaism is so much more than this. Our tradition holds wisdom, beauty, values, and stories that nourish the soul, that affirm life. Consider the spiritual needs of our young people today. They face pressures from all directions: the rise of social media, intense academic demands, and growing concerns about the world they will inherit. They come here looking for answers to the big questions. What is my purpose? What does it mean to be good? How can I make the world a better place? How can I find peace within myself? If not for us, at least for them, let us build a synagogue that is a place of spiritual exploration and community, a place where they can encounter the wisdom of Torah, the depth of Jewish ethics, and the beauty of Jewish prayer. Practicing a purely tribal Judaism is a sure way to alienate them, particularly this young generation who struggle with Israel much more than previous generations did. In Abraham's story, we see a model of faith that is complex, multifaceted, and deeply relational. He challenges God. He does not just accept things at face value. Similarly, we too must come to synagogue ready to be challenged. This is not a place for passive, superficial expressions of identity. It is a place to encounter Torah in ways that ask us to reflect, to grow, to engage with difficult questions, and ultimately to become better, more compassionate people. And yes, there's a time and place to talk about Israel, but let's talk about it in a way that broadens our understanding of Jewish life and deepens our connection to our tradition. Israel is a profound part of our identity, but it cannot be our entire identity. This is a synagogue. It is not an Israeli embassy where our mission and vision are shaped solely by political loyalties or geopolitical alliances. We have a responsibility to engage with Israel thoughtfully, with love and with an open heart, and to incorporate our connection to Israel within a broader understanding of who we are as Jews and what it is we're supposed to be doing when we gather here. This Shabbat, let's be inspired by Abraham, who didn't just sit in his tent alone, but opened its doors wide, ready to meet the divine in whomever might appear. May our synagogue, too, be a tent open to all, open to questions, to challenges, and to growth. Let's remember why we're here, seeking not only connection with one another, but a connection with God to transform us. We come here not to reinforce our own views, but to open our minds and hearts to the values, ethics, and spiritual treasures that make our Jewish identity so rich and resilient. As we pray, learn, and sing together, may we all strive to create a synagogue community that is more than a refuge from the world's troubles, a place that is a source of light, of peace, and of inspiration, our place where our children learn not only about the dangers that may await them, but about the beauty, the joy, and life-affirming wisdom that is their inheritance. And may we, like Abraham, seek the divine not only in the safe and comfortable, but in the encounters that challenge us, that stretch us, and that make us grow. Shabbat Shalom.